Welcome to Field Talk, a Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Join our host, Wallace Curry, as he explores the stories from Monitor Farm networks on how farmers have adapted their businesses with support from specialists and experts to assess farm performance and explore opportunities. Monitor Farm Scotland is farmer-led, farmer-driven, encouraging discussion and solution-based thinking.
Welcome back, everyone, to Field Talk, the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. The last episode we went to Ayrshire with David Andrew, hearing what they're doing on the Ayrshire Monitor Farm. Today is actually the last episode of this series. We hopefully will be back sometime down the line, looking more at sort of projects and innovation running through the Monitor Farm programme. But today's episode, we're heading to Argyllshire. The theme for today, we're going to look at farming on an island. And for those that know me, that's obviously quite close to heart, coming from a different island from today's guest. And today's guest is the Argyllshire Monitor farmer from Islay, is Craig Archibald. Craig, would you like to say hello?
How are you doing? Yep.
Are you well? Enjoying this weather at the minute? It is lovely.
Oh, glorious. It's always like this in Ireland.
Yeah, I'd love to say the same for Aaron. It is, but here it is. It's always stunning on Aaron. Craig, these podcasts are really good. We speak to those that are involved in the Monitor Farm programme, why they get in, how they get in, for what reason, and what it's sort of been since. But just before we get into the Monitor Farm programme and that side of things, could we focus a wee bit on the farm itself? Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about the farm, what you've got on the farm, sort of size, and how that operates.
Yeah, we're just a family farm. We're rented off of Islay Estates. It's on a wholesale tenancy. My mum and dad moved here from Yorkshire in 1971. I was 1 year old. It's a 3,000 acre farm, and we've gathered up ground on either side as the estate haven't done anything, and we've now up to a 5,000 acre farm. Was originally sheep, roughly 1,000 sheep, and at one point we were up to 170 dairy cows, and then the creamery shut, and then we started in 2000 on our 5 year plan to become a beef farm, and we're now 25 years into that 5 year plan.
I think the 5 year plan was the right decision then.
Yeah, so we're now, it's me and my wife now. My dad's still tenant, and our three children are coming back into the farm well, one's only 15. The other two one works off farm and comes and does stuff at nights and weekends, and my daughter's on the farm full time.
All right. What breeds of cattle and sheep are you running?
We're pretty much 220 cattle. They're Angus. We started off with Limousins and Angus, and fell out with an Angus. Fell out with a couple of Limousin, a bull, and I fell out with got a good kick off a Limousin Stark, so we ended up with Angus's, and that's how we ended up there. On the other side was sheep. We have 1,000 black faces, and we've had a few Cheviots to try, a few Cheviots, and just trying to fit them in, and we've struggled to make it work. But we might eventually. My daughter's going to have 40 kind of special pedigree. They're not pedigree, but they're to see what she can do with them, and if we can get the right Cheviot to fit the place, we might change from blackface to Cheviot, and then that's one of the big changes is we're going to change the sheep system quite a bit.
It's actually just one of the transitions that we've done, moving away from from Blackie, some swales, and to be honest, some Blackie swale crosses, and sort of that transition toward Cheviots. Yeah, just a change that I've seen a few folk making, in fairness. I don't think it's anything against the Blackie. I think it's just a positive for the Cheviot, to be fair. I think one thing, certainly when I think of your island, Craig, I think of whiskey. Are you growing any barley on the farm?
Yeah, we grow 50 acre of barley roughly. It's just a kind of rotation. Our better fields we have we grow 50 acre of barley, and that's kind of one field coming out every year. So 25 acres comes out each year. We grow 2 year barley. And before the barley, we'll grow a forage crop for fattening lambs, nice silage. But the whiskies, we always grew the barley, probably more for the straw than it is for the barley. You can cart barley to Islay, but straw is expensive to cart to Islay. And we sell to distilleries. They malt, they they take it for malting, but Gladdy does. And that's quite good money when so we don't really do anything special. We just, as long as the margin's there to sell to them and buy in. If the odd year it doesn't work, we'll just popcorn it and use it ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's good to have that option. And there's one thing that when we sort of arrange these discussions for yourself, Craig, we get a wee bit of background to yourself. One thing that stands out that is not something I've been aware of before, is a goose management scheme. Now, I assume you get some challenges with geese, but what's that? What does that involve?
Yeah, so the goose management scheme is we get paid for paid compensation for the damage the geese do to our ground. And so in Islay, quite specifically, we're in one of the worst spots because with the estuary in the north end of Islay, we're right next to the RSPB Nature Reserve as well. So Islay at the moment's running about 30,000 barnacle geese during the winter and 5 to 6,000 white front geese. At peak, that was up at about 45,000 barnacle geese. And it was nearly impossible to farm at that stage. So we're kind of trying to manage numbers, and bird flu's manage numbers to an extent as well. So what the geese do is basically they take away all our winter grazing. So they arrive in occasionally September, mainly kind of 10th, 15th October, and they'll come in, and there's actually a bigger amount. There's all the geese from all the areas come to Islay and then spread out. They mow off all your autumn grass, um, and then by now they're just basically keeping the ground absolutely bare, pulling the grass out, paddling it to death. So we have to constantly top up our fields with grass seed or plough and reseed. But then that's ends up with more geese because you're attracting them with better feed. So it basically gives us I suppose it's October. We don't have any grass from definitely by the first week in November. I'm putting my lambs onto forage crop by then, and that's you're managing the grazing as the geese come in, and basically you're tapping as the grass is disappearing as well because the fields are bare by that stage. You're hoping you've got enough condition on your ewes, and then at this end, you're hoping that your ewes are going to survive through to when the grass grows in May. So they're lambing down on very little grass again, and that goes out onto the kind of greener bits on the hill, or it's not hill like Aaron, like yourself, but it's what we call, I don't know how you would phrase it, but the rough ground. So the biggest challenge for us is if sheep could just have another 1 or 2 months gestation period, would suit us.
I don't know if that breed's appeared yet. Are you drilling grass for quite a few people then, Craig, or just yourselves?
We do a wee bit for other people. There's quite a few direct drills and different types of drills in Islay, and quite a lot of people have got their own kit.
Yeah. Um, this is the Monitor Farm podcast that we're on. Tell us a wee bit, Craig, about, I guess, were you aware of it before? How did you come across it? And what made you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was aware of it before. Our neighbour's brother-in-law Ian Mackay did it in Mull, and been down to the one in Kintyre a couple of times. Where Duncan McAllister did it, and yeah, I quite keen. Always, I never usually generally want to be first into a change. I usually watch neighbours, see what they do, see if it works, and then copy them. That's so. This is a wee bit out of what I normally do.
Has that been a
Um,
challenge at first, sort of jumping in as you are the one that's having a look at everything, seeing what changes you want to try and make and be the one that people are following? Has that been a bit of a strange feeling?
I don't know whether they'll follow me, but they might just see the mistakes I make. Yeah, it is a very strange feeling.
No, good on you. Credit to you. What's the main focus? Everyone's sort of got a different focus. You know, we've spoke to people that are focusing on the arable side. We've spoke to people that are focused on the data side. What's the thing you've really wanted to improve through the program?
Well, I think to start with, it wasn't really necessarily improve. I just didn't. I know trades come up since we started this, but the year or two before we started this, all I could see was what we were getting for our stock wasn't really going up, and all our costs were going up. And I couldn't really see where to invest in the farm, whether to keep going, whether there was a future in it, um, whether there was a business in it, which at the end of the day is what it is. So that's kind of where we were.
You focused quite a bit on the suckler side, looking at some figures. Um, Biggest challenge being sort of collating lots of different data, not just one data set, and trying to make it all make sense together. Tell us a wee bit about what you've been looking at there.
Yeah, well, to start with, when we started it, it didn't really look like it. Beef cows looked like they were doing fine. That kind of middle of the road, they were doing all right. You couldn't really see what was wrong or whether there was anything really wrong, or just it was just that's what it was. And the more we looked at it, we've ended up concentrating and doing an awful lot on cows at the end of the day. Um, and it's so hard with beef cows. There's so many things you can record, and it's proprietary. Oh, I don't know what the word is.
Prioritizing.
Putting which at which level to actually, which is the most important bit. There's an urge for everyone to go for smaller cows. There's all that talk from outside, and then there's body condition, and then we've trying to outwinter cows. So do we value cows that are well fleshed, that go through the winter on very little feed? Or then there's the thinking that maybe if they're well fleshed, they're not actually putting enough into their calf.
Been
So
caught at every angle.
mhm.
With with the outwintering, Craig, is that a challenge? You were saying there was a struggle with geese at that time of year as well, or is it not too bad a challenge on the cattle side of things?
On the cattle side, it's slightly different. We have some dune land that's designated for floristic flowers. So we've eventually got nature's got round to the fact that we don't graze it in the summer, so all flowers, and then we then put the cows on during the winter. They graze it away till it's bare at this time of year, and then the flowers come again, which works really well. So the answer's getting that kind of amount of grass on the ground that the geese aren't going to want. The geese don't focus on that ground straight away because they're looking for the better ground. So it's only kind of this time of year they'll start to hit that ground if there's anything grows on it. So we've two or three bits we leave completely ungrazed all summer.
And looking at, just because you mentioned them, body condition score, looking at sort of the size of your cattle, are you quite happy with how that's going?
Yeah, we've done it. I can't do my figures with me, but I think we were working out about a 750 kilo cow. So we've reduced by changing it. We're Angus's, and there's kind of like, I suppose, with any breed, there's breeds within breeds. So the Angus's, we've focused on that kind of shorter, thicker Angus, shorter in height, hopefully not in length. Um, and we've got the cow size down. I'm not sure we've got the cow weight down that much, but I'm not sure that's much of a problem because she's now carrying more flesh. So she's going through the winter. When we first started out wintering cows, we would start bringing we would check them before Christmas even, start bringing one or two of these tall lean cows in and carry on doing it every kind of fortnight or 3 weeks from then till well, when we bring them to calving. And now we don't really need to, unless something's obviously wrong with a cow, we don't really need to start doing that till end of January, beginning of February. Sometimes even like last year, we didn't do it till February.
And then looking down to the calf itself, Craig, there's been some focus on the nutrition there. Are you using a lot of homegrown grains? What's the nutrition changes or maybe just sort of focus has been?
Well, because the benefit of being an island with distilleries is draft and the cost of draft. So we don't actually pay for our draft,
Yeah.
but it's not for nothing because you have to take it all summer as well. So you have to build pits or put it under your silage or handle it or feed it. But we were feeding quite a lot of draft before, but we're feeding historically when draft was worth quite a lot more money. We used to feed soya along with it. So we'd carried on feeding soya and quite a bit of draft. And Lorna Shaw's looked at it and taken out the soya and put in a wee bit of beet pulp. And our calves are just thriving that much better. That wee bit of wheat pulp seems to balance the gut somehow. The calves are tighter, they look smarter, they're not that gutty way, and they're thriving earlier in the winter as well.
Excellent. And then in the summertime, grazing, you're looking at a sort of rotational system now, is that right?
Yeah, well, we kind of half did it before. We'd watched our neighbours across at Urig at the RSPB, and they'd gone into a kind of rotational field batch system. So we'd kind of dabbled with it a wee bit, even putting our numbers up to batches of 80 cows and running two or three bulls at once. But then last year, we got quite a bit of help from Michael. I can't remember his name. He so we went through and we split all our fields into 5 acre paddocks. Um, Michael Blanche. Um, so he so when so last year when we tried rotational grazing properly, we picked into 5 acre paddocks, and it was quite a stressful year to do it, I think, because it wasn't a good year. We didn't get the benefit of that warmth at the beginning of May. We don't have any grass in, but you could see it was trying to grow, and it looked beautiful. But because the geese have it that bare, we didn't really get any grass on the ground by then, and it cooled down by the end of May, beginning of June, when we started this. So we put the cows onto this, split the fields, and we run two herds of 40 round these 5 acre paddocks. And it was 3 day moves and just moving them round and round and round. And we're getting very near the end of the cycle before we came back in again.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at this and there's no grass, and I'm going to make this is not working. I can't see um, how this is going to work. So they made me get a phone at the beginning of this. So I've now got, so we're taking WhatsApp videos, and Michael spotted the cows in the background. He goes, The cows are your cows are happy. What are your cows like? Look at your cows. And cows were fit. And the cows were happy. They weren't roaring for food. And it just shows you need some help when you're doing something new. You couldn't just. I would have given that up. I don't know how many times if you didn't have help, because it's not easy. And other things like water, getting water to cows, that's hard work for that sort of thing. So everyone can say you just, we'll just do rotational grazing, but it doesn't just happen. And then it's having the confidence to do it, and then leave and wait, um, and measure grass. So it's quite. So by the end of the summer, I know it doesn't necessarily work, but the first year we did it, which was last year, we only had one empty cow out of our 80 cows that were in the system. Now, that's not to say we won't go back up to 10 empty cows next year, but it does look quite good at the moment. And the calves were just as good. And we had the calves out until November.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So,
I think that you're right about that sort of having that assistance there. It's not yeah, Michael's great, so there probably was technical assistance, but also just that sort of go for it or just that little extra. okay, I'm not doing this wrong, or I'm not in the complete wrong direction, is all that's required for that change, whatever that change might be. A complete grazing shift is a big change as well. There's that sort of, oh my God, is this going to work? Fear as well. So sometimes just that bit of support from someone like Michael, who is very self-deprecating himself as well, is good. Is good.
No, it's
Not
good. It's good as well because like the management group's quite good for that as well. You know,
tell
that you've got
tell us
extra
about the
people
management.
there.
Tell us about it, Craig. The management group itself.
Well, in Islay, we've kind of kept it a bit more wider because we don't have, rather than having a lot of people, we've kept virtually everyone involved. There is for different we've more got different wee management groups to do with rotational grazing and different wee ones to do with different things. So slightly set up a wee bit different. But no, it's been really good to have folk that have tried this stuff, folk that are interested. The folk that are interested, that's a good one, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Not just because I come from a sheep farm, but on the sheep side of things, you touched on there, maybe a bit of a breeding shift. What is the plans?
Yeah. So the sheep systems, you know it all, or we don't. You don't say know it all. You know all the things you should be doing, but you tend not to do them. You have bad years and you stop doing things, or you end up down an alley. So when I was saying about geese earlier, when we were up at 47,000 geese, I think we had a couple of years we were down at 60-70% lambings. Um, just and we had to go buy some cheap year lambs just to keep the numbers up. And then you kind of lose interest in why would you you don't have enough ewes, so you're not chopping like we'd going back. So we're going back to some of the things we used to do. Like if you have a problem with a blackie ewe, you chop a horn off, two horns off, and she's down the road. Or it should be the first one really, but um, going back to just keeping your twins separate from marking them separately and keeping off your twins. So we're doing that on the kind of main two kind of hill flocks. Going back to the basics of the easy care and prolificacy type of thing. And then we're then going to make both of them hill flocks a bit smaller. And off one of them, we're going to try and breed hopefully a 200 flock that we can run on the kind of better ground to try and if we can get them lambing just the same time outside, but a better if we can take the grazing pressure off some of these other bits, 200 that will feed silage to lamb the normal time, but hopefully they'll be in the fields and we can get the lambs off them away store beginning of August. Then we can maybe start to think about spaining the hill flocks a bit earlier and try and get the lambs off of them or keep the yow lambs get them better. Or you try and do your black ear lambs through the winter or your hill cheviot through the winter. They don't grow in the middle of winter. And that's when we end up trying to fatten lambs as well then. So trying to bring things earlier just to give us a bit better life so we're not actually girdling about in shit all winter.
Been a lot of that this year. It's been a it's been a wet one. When did you say you do lamb at the minute? Sorry, Craig.
Middle of April.
Mid-April. Yeah, yeah.
So if we went to the end of April, we would maybe have a wee bit of grass. If we lambed the first week in May, there might be a wee bit of grass for the sheep, but then your lambing percentage comes down that much. And if you go beginning of April, your lambing percentage jumps, but then you've got a long time till there's grass.
When,
The other thing we're
when
doing with sheep is the gimmering. So Lorna made us count. It was a bit sad last winter. Uh, where our problems were. So we went through the gimmers. So we counted the amount of dead sheep that your black loss and whatever else. So we've wandered along the ditches that are likely for these, and over half of them were gimmers. And then at scanning, over half the empties were gimmers. And then we tried on the kind of second cycle at lambing time. We counted up when we managed to throw most of the ewes off. Half of them were gimmers again. So that can indicate the gimmers were the problem. Um,
What changes have been made? What are the plans for changes?
well, the plan is that if we can get these store lambs away earlier, either get some of the blackies away earlier or put some more away store or change to cheviot or something. And then we can then start using some of that forage crop for the yow lambs, try and get them more fully grown.
Aye, good, good. I know it's yeah, pretty conclusive with the figures you were saying about the Gummers there, to be fair. So yeah, hopefully things pan out. You touched on, Craig, that sort of concept of farming with nature, the place where the cattle are grazed, is also growing quite a lot of sort of biodiversity there. Has that been a new thing for the farm? Is it already been quite biodiverse? You've just been focusing on it a wee bit more now?
Yeah, I would say we when I started this, there was a kind of bit of a pressure to go that biodiversity route, and I've kind of pushed away for the first 2 years because I would like to get us to produce livestock first and then monitor the difference on biodiversity. But also, so if you join some of these EEC schemes, if we'd been in an EEC concrete scheme, we couldn't have done that rotational grazing. So you can't do these changes. So we've been in EEC schemes before. We've got a goose scheme. We've got plenty of wildlife. So it's just managing how you fit that in. It's a bit like the rotational grazing. It will be interesting. We're going to see if we can get someone to do a wee study next year to see whether, like, so the chuffs, when you change the grazing off one bit to another when it's bare, is that a time when the chuff can get in and get the grubs and stuff? Is it like cutting silage? Is it, and see whether that could change a wee bit? Um, but we're thereabouts. There's quite a lot of chuffs about, a lot of geese about, sea eagles about, normal eagles about. There's no real shortage of wildlife.
You mentioned sea eagles there. Any challenges or okay for now?
We're beginning to see it. On the faraway farm when we're lambing, any sets of twins at the beginning would normally quite often end up as singles, but that would be generally greater blackback gulls. We do have quite a lot of ravens as well, but they'll be kind of in different bits in the farms. And I think quite a lot of your raven killing you don't see. I think they nick tongues when their lambs are getting born, and you see this lamb in a ditch or in a bog or somewhere else a few days later. And I think it's just lambs don't get to suit. But the sea eagle's a new one because 3, 4 years ago, I do the hill closer to the farm, and it's my wife and daughter that do the one further away. And I'll go to pick a lamb up or something, go get a yow which they couldn't catch or something. By the time I get back, the lamb's disappeared, which I think would be sea eagles to start with. And then we're starting to lose one or two that you're not seeing. So I think they're taking them. But this summer we lost 4 or 5. So they were lambed in April. That would have been, trying to think when that was, July. 4 or 5 lambs that were killed in July, plucked and blood everywhere. So that it's not a normal. It's not a lamb that died and then was then eaten. So they're taking bigger lambs now.
Healthy, strong lambs almost ready to go. Aye, it's tough. It's tough. And the thing that you mentioned ravens and crows and whatnot there, the thing that really annoys me about them is they don't even eat it. As you say, they take a tongue or an eye or something like that. It's cruel. Yeah, and the sea eagles is a worry, but hopefully, hopefully there's it doesn't get worse. But that's a different topic for a different day, I think it's fair to say.
It is a
Um,
challenge.
Major, major. I've mentioned a couple of times, Craig, when we think of Islay, we think of a famous Scottish drink. I think you guys have got double figures of distilleries now, so I'm assuming a lot of tourists on the island, and you guys have somewhat capitalised on that. You've diversified somewhat on the farm. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about that?
Yeah, well, it was in the back of, I think, 1989, something like that. I think it would be that there was a development plan came round and My dad was asked whether we'd use the foreshore for anything, and we weren't at the time. So they took him to France to show him how oyster farming works. So back then, we started just with a wee bit, and you had to show you could grow them, then you had to show you could sell them. And over the years, it's gone in highs and lows. The oyster farming has. It's probably up to a reasonable sized business now, and we used to sell originally with a 45-gallon drum at the back door with a wee bit of air bubbling through from the compressor in the workshop. Folk used to take their own oysters, borrow the oyster knife, go and read a book down the shore, open the oysters and drop the knife back afterwards. And then over the years, it's just got so much more demanding. The tourists to the stage that pre-COVID, folk were coming up and being quite awkward if you didn't have a restaurant or an oyster experience. So we either had to stop selling to the public on Islay or make something a bit different. So we converted an old byre, well, it's a cart shed stable and byre into a wee cafe, which we did over COVID, and then we opened it November 22, is it? I think, or 23.
Quite busy, I take it.
Yeah. And it's been really good, and we're well out in the sticks, and yet some days in the summer they can have 100 people.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So you're North Islay, did you say? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant.
So
Brilliant.
it's we're fully 5 miles from the main road,
Got you. Got you.
down a pretty rough road. It's my wife, my niece, my daughter, my wife's two sisters. So it's a full-on family.
Closed off in some ways, but here to be in that position and still have that many people in the summers, you must be doing something correct. Looking forward, Craig, you know what the plans are. You've sort of been involved in this program for what's coming up on 2.5 years now. There's obviously been a lot of changes, a lot of analysis, and sort of deciding what way to take the business. You've been looking a bit at virtual fencing. What's the thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, virtual fencing's been mentioned since the beginning of the monitor farm, and Christine, our fixer in the monitor farm, is so optimistic about all this. And I go, do I need virtual fencing? I wasn't sure I did. And I've now got to the stage I'm actually quite looking forward to it. We're getting 25 callers, and we'll split, we'll just throw 50 cows pre-bulling. So they're pretty much identical, and we'll just split 25 of them off, put the collars on them, and we're going to put them out onto rough grazing. Probably a lot of the sheep just, well, you'll know, blackie sheep, there's any sheep, they'll just sit and wait on the good bit of grass for the grass growing rather than going and graze something that's not that palatable. So put the cows onto this kind of in between the good ground and the really rough ground, and see what happens. So if we a lot of that is green in the spring, so if they munch through that, hopefully it'll come back green again in the autumn and they can go around it again. We have thousands of acres of this sort of stuff. I would say some of ours is probably more marginal than we're probably in the marginal end because it's that kind of peaty ground. But if it'll work here, it'll work anywhere. But I'm quite optimistic. Because again, looking just what we were speaking about there, the sea eagles, there might come a time that sheep's going to be very hard to farm.
Mm. Yeah. I know you're right, you're absolutely right. And I think your transition of maybe lack of optimism to optimism is exactly how I've looked at virtual fencing, to be honest. I was a wee bit apprehensive. But Christine has that impact. She's got that optimistic positivity that just rubs off on you as well, doesn't she? Um,
Yeah.
she's a great lady.
No, so I think I mean Isla was a cow, aye, a cow island back in the day. There was no sheep; it was only cows. A small herd was 30 or 40 Highland cows. So maybe my breed of cow might struggle. Maybe we'll have to change. Maybe we'll have to look at it. A few other folk have said that have asked that have put cows onto rough ground say that we'll have to maybe manage it for a year or two, because it'll take a year or two for the cows to improve that grass to better grass. So we might just need to monitor the quality of grass for bulling and things. We might need to supplement for a year or two, or at that time of year or something, a couple of kilos of cobs or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've sort of touched on one thing there. Anything else in the pipeline for the farm coming up?
I don't know.
I think we're in a good spot.
I think that's quite a lot of change.
I'd say so. I'd say so. Yeah, it's been pretty. I think you said just before we hit record, you sort of went in thinking cows are fine, we'll focus on everything else, and it's amazing even at that stage the sort of changes in the plans I guess you've had on the cattle side of things. So no, it's pretty good going. Um,
I would think the next year, we need to really try and get everything going as well as we can this next year, and then decide in this next year, a year and a half, 2 years, or whatever's to go. By the end of that, we want to be coming up with a kind of not a set plan, but a plan going forward of how we're going to manage the farm, manage the herds. I mean, it's a bit like the cows. We're actually thinking maybe at the moment we put Charlie bulls over the cows we just don't like. So it's a simple system. I don't need bookwork. When I come to draw my heifers, it's the black ones, and it's not the white ones. But we're thinking maybe try and make the Charlie herd a different herd, and maybe even the outwintered cows. At the moment, we bring back to sheds to calve, so they're in the shed for 2, 3, 4 weeks, calved, and then straight back out to maybe start doing some calving outside.
Yeah, good, good. And from a looking at, the we've mentioned that sort of the management group, Craig. We've mentioned that sort of ability to be the one trying something first. But from a community perspective, you've mentioned you're quite far out in the sticks. You're a good few miles away from the closest road. Has this been beneficial to the area itself? You've had Nature Scott around, you've had consultants, you've had whoever. Has that been beneficial to those around you as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of knowledge being passed on. Actually, some of the most well attended meetings are the ones you would think would have been the driest meetings.
Yeah,
When it comes to doing your animal health plans, your biodiversity plans, your all that sort of stuff. It's even with the department there, what to expect from an inspection, and it's good for them to get out on farm and meet farmers when we're not under stress as well. When they're
absolutely. No, you're right. It's here. Craig, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to hear about the sort of different ways in which farms operate across islands that really aren't that far apart, but are completely different in so many different ways. It's been good to chat to you about your thoughts on the Monitor Farm itself and what the plans are for the next year and a half or just over. So thank you.
well, thanks.
Been a pleasure, and for those of you listening, that's been Craig Archibald speaking about farming on Islay, and I've certainly learned quite a few things there, even if it was just the challenges of farming in the presence of just as many geese. If you want to listen to the last episode, we spoke to David Andrew in Ayrshire, another monitor farmer here in Scotland, and that will be the end of this series. There is more coming. Hopefully a short break. Let's not make it too long. We'll look at some of the innovation projects that have been carried out by the programme in the next series. So thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for listening to Field Talks first series, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you get your podcast from for more episodes as we continue to dive into the stories from our monitor farms. If you want to stay updated with our latest news and events, please visit the Monitor Farm Scotland website and follow us on social media for more updates and keep in the know about what our farms are getting up to. Monitor Farm Scotland is funded by Scottish Government and managed by Quality Meat Scotland and AHDB.